because it's not the straightforward liniment process where you take a bunch of herbs, put them in some rice wine or cheap alcohol and stick it in the ground for 6 months. You can do way, way better extraction in about 10 days if you do some trickery. So anyway, that was a clay pot on the front porch of my clinic.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. All countries draw their maps with them at the center of the world. China, it goes even further, calls itself the Middle Kingdom, the center of the world. You could call it ethnocentrism. I suspect it's unavoidable. Unavoidable because so it is with each of us. We draw ourselves from the center of the world. How could we be other than the center of our perception? I suspect it's not possible to escape the tyranny of me and everything else. What's more, if you don't attend to the world that's yours, if you abdicate that for which you're sovereignly responsible, then you're asking for trouble, asking for trespass, for powerlessness, and the pain that arises from not building the vision of what you'd like to see the world become. Everything in nature has its domain, its territory, its sphere of influence. We do too. It's not a problem to be solved, but more a series of opportunities to be discovered. All of nature has a niche. Anything thriving in a niche, it's right in the center of its world. What's the center of your world? What influences are you resourced by? What gives you strength? How does it feel to be at the center of your world? Do you recognize the edges where your influence thins and bumps up against others? How do you navigate it? With cooperation and trade? Defense and resistance? Trust or caution? Perhaps sages and saints can escape the prison of perception, of the mind creating a center and periphery in us and a them. But for the rest of us, we dance with dualism, which you can easily see as being a problem unless you've learned to recognize it's possible to connect centers together, that there is strength in diversity, and that while nature endows us in dramatically unequal ways, it is precisely those differences that join together make us stronger together. What drives people to do something entrepreneurial? After all, most entrepreneurial efforts, they end in failure. Why would you want to attempt something that has such a poor track record for success? Generally speaking, entrepreneurs don't throw in on their undertaking for money. If you want money, probably better to work on Wall Street. No, entrepreneurs, they're bothered by something. Bothered enough to make things different. And generally speaking, there are a lot of iterations involved in crafting something that both satisfies you and your customer. Mark Brinson, he started mixing up his own liniments because he wasn't satisfied with what was on the market. So, in service of helping his patients, he started extracting his own bone water. Here's the other thing about running your own business. You get to do it in the way that you want, and that kind of freedom is priceless. We'll be getting into what goes into evil bone water here in just a moment. Stay with us. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out the new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Mark Brinson, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm delighted because, I've had all kinds of people on the podcast. I've had scholars, I've had practitioners, I've had writers, I've even had other podcasters, but this is the first time I've had a saint on the podcast, Saint Apothecary.
Yeah, I looked through the list of people that you interviewed, and they were pretty much the names that are on my bookshelves back here. And I'm like, oh, what does he want to talk to me about?
Well, because if you continue to look at the people that I've talked to, while some of them did write books that are on your bookshelves, a lot of the people that I talk to are just regular, everyday, common yard dog practitioners. They're out doing their thing. They're not in any kind of limelight except maybe with their own patients. They're just doing the work. They're too busy doing the work to put a shine on themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's the backbone of any of these other businesses that we have along with our Chinese medicine practice. That hard work ethic backbone of having a really good everyday practice, being an everyday person. I think that's what ends up making for a successful side business, or in some of our cases, it becomes our whole business. But hard work is behind those.
So you've got you sound like Mike Rowe now. Are you familiar with Mike Rowe? Do you know who that guy is?
Oh, yeah, I am. Love the guy.
He should, maybe he should visit you.
Oh, he'd probably love it here. I'd put him to work right away, too. I didn't exactly think that I was going to end up being kind of a brewer and distiller and in that business, or being a manufacturer, but the work really does appeal to me. I've always been a hands-on guy, clinically, a lot of tweena, a lot of orthopedics and osteopathic work. Get in there and do the work. I always tell people that in my clinic, I've got every physical therapy or whatnot piece of equipment known to man under the cabinets, but my hands, the cups, the needles, the herbs, that's pretty much 95% of the practice. So this is kind of a good next chapter for me, sort of a segue. I'll still keep treating, although not nearly as much. But believe it or not, the brewing and distilling industry, it's a lot like what we do in Chinese medicine. It's problem solving, which is why all of us that stick around love it so much. Distilling and brewing is like adult Legos. There's always something to solve. There's always another way to do it. There's what they say, many cures, one treatment, many treatments, one disease, or something to that effect. But it's the same way in this industry. You're limited only by your imagination. So it's a good transition for me.
Brewing and distilling. That's, I hadn't thought about what you do as brewing and distilling, but very much in a sense. Now, for folks that might not be familiar with what we're talking about, we're not talking about whiskey here. We're talking about evil bone water.
Yes. In the Chinese medicine community and in China, there's a formula called shenggu shui that has just been the time-honored formula that's been around forever, that over the decades, and I've been doing this for 30-some years now, but anyway, over the decades, we've seen it basically become watered down for the American market. And what happened is a company called Solstice started buying up all of our best products and buying the exclusive import rights about 7 years ago. And their first one they bought was shenggu shui. And they immediately took some herbs off the list of what they were putting in it, have their export only type thing, busted it down to just 6 herbs. I suspect food coloring and a couple other things in it too. And they started just jacking the prices up because their idea is that if they promote to the American public, and this is by and large true, the American public doesn't know the difference between, cinnamon that's from 3-year-old trees from Southeast Asia and 30-year-old cinnamon bark coming down to one time. They just don't. So anyway, I saw it and I was like, I got to start making this stuff. And really my first mission is I just wanted to make it for my patients so I didn't have to raise their prices. And then it took a while to really break down the formula and try to make it as good as I possibly could, the way that it used to be made, returning some herbs, the rare, the expensive, returning the process. But then it sort of became this thing. By the time I was ready, it took me about 6 months to really break it down and get it right. I just wanted to share it with other people, how to make it, because I really feel that even if you're not an herbalist per se, but you're in the profession of Chinese medicine, at least making some things a few times, it's extremely rewarding and it teaches you a lot. And so that was before I sold the first commercial bottle, other than my clinic, I was selling it quite a bit. It was just to show people how to do it, show people what the process is like, because it's not the straightforward liniment process where you take a bunch of herbs, put them in some rice wine or cheap alcohol and stick it in the ground for 6 months. It's you can do way, way better extraction in about 10 days if you do some trickery. So anyway, that was a clay pot on the front porch of my clinic, literally. My original clay pot that I've had on the front porch of the clinic. So now it looks crazy around here. I've got my latest batches are 300 gallons. I've got 2 of them that are being tended to now. So we still tend them every day. I still stir them every day. Sometimes stir them in different ways by hand, but sometimes by air. And there's some other things that are in the wings too. We don't cut any corners and we keep striving for better and better quality. We just had huge increases in our water quality and water profile. We will likely, by the end of the year, be distilling our own alcohol for it, because even though Everclear, which we refuse to use commercial cheap ethanol. We only use potable Everclear. When your Everclear bill gets to be $150,000 a year, we start looking at some other options. But
Wow.
also within that
Problem. Then now there's a problem of success, right?
yeah. But it's funny because I've been really intensely studying distilling for probably 5 months now. When I say intensely, every other night about 3 hours in videos and talking to people and things like that. And I'm coming to realize that even the Everclear that we use is kind of like one of those benchmarks for quality when they make stuff is really kind of crappy. They add some stuff back into it that they...
Yeah, I want to get into that. So, I mean, wow, there's a lot here. First, you are so in the tradition of so many people in our profession where there's an itch that you needed to scratch. It was your itch. It's something that you saw needed to be done because you wanted to take care of your patients.
Yes.
There are people that have built herb companies based on that. There are people that have built publishing houses based on that. We all have a practice based on that. But it's weird and wonderful that sometimes we see something and it really bothers the hell out of us. And it's like, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to do something about that. And the next thing you know, you got 300-gallon vats of stuff brewing. Oh, well, the alcohol we have, that stuff's not good enough. And by the way, the quality of the water, that makes a difference too. That's a huge distance from, oh, this thing isn't working very well, I'll just try to DIY my own. So I want to dig in a little bit to how you follow a path like this. First of all, the name is so ridiculously fun. Every time I think about evil bone water, it puts a smile on my face. What better branding could you have than when people think about what you're doing and they go, that guy's hilarious. And then to hear behind it, take, for example, cinnamon, right? Like, what kind of cinnamon are we using? It makes a difference. It makes a big difference. And what I'd like to dig into a little bit is what it is that you're actually paying attention to. How do you know, as you go through this process, as you work with these materials, as you work with your patients and your customers too, for that matter, as this stuff goes out in the world and you get feedback, how do you know what to pay attention to? How do you know where to put your focus and how to follow so that you can continue improving this thing that has your attention?
So, that is a really good question because a lot of the ways that I do, I'm very, very traditionally trained in business. In my 20s, I studied everybody and everything to do with business. And actually, I started brewing and distilling them. That's when I was in Chinese medicine. I couldn't get enough study. A lot of the things I was able to cheap for to implement. So they're coming back to me now almost as like my own ideas, but I know it was like Wayne Dwyer or somebody they're talking how to do this, or Tony Robbins like decades ago. It's just kind of coming out as like my own idea. But with the business, I tell my staff this too, my team, that it's just really, really simple. We just don't cut corners. And if we can find a way to make something better, we make it better. And on the other end of that, our other mission is we want to make it so our profession gets really strong. So we have a very, very low wholesale, and we have an online retail that's very high, but they can sell it in their clinic for whatever they want. So the idea is to help people. It's as simple as that. We don't look how many cases that we sold this with. We look how many people that would help. And it just gets easier and easier to pursue these really high standards as far as quality goes. Because every single week you hear stuff back about how it's helped somebody, how, especially when it helps somebody that is very non-Chinese medicine, herbs, herbal, that type of thing, because they end up becoming some of our biggest fans. But it's these people's family members that are frustrated with them. So it for a couple of years ago, we were making all the money that you needed to make. It's no longer about that. It's about how can we help people. Now, I think the quality thing, we started with the highest quality that we could get from the beginning, from month 2. But it's the byproduct of making something over and over again. You would think that it would get boring, but no. What my brain does is it tries to find ways when I can extract more, where I can get more out of it, where I can make it more perfect, where I can make it longer lasting. Where, like with the water system that we did, fortunately, my brother-in-law is a plumber. And so I told him, I'm like, look, I want a water system like what distillers have, except I want it better. I want something really clear. And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I just want it really cool. I don't really care. And so when your plumber comes back and is super excited about this water system, you know that you probably got really, really good water. I was like, what can we do to make it cooler? Can we ionize it? He was like, oh yeah, we can ionize it. And so, but I find that in that pursuit of quality as well, there's a whole lot of synergy, because typically in business, the way that you expand, the way that you make money is you make money by cutting corners. And I always tell people we're just not. The first time that you do that is the first time you made your first excuse, which will lead to your second excuse or whatnot. And so now staff doesn't even ask.
Amen, brother. That, I think it's actually a terrible misconception. And one of the reasons why business gets a bad name, and rightly so at times, because, well, we're doing good. We're going to cut some corners. We got a marketplace. People are buying our stuff. We can take the foot off the accelerator. And that's the moment. That is the moment where your decline comes. Because I think it's really true that when you're paying attention to what you do and when you want to deliver to people, you can say it with your mouth, we're bringing you the best. Everybody says that. But when you're actually bringing your best, when you're putting that energy into what you got, people notice that stuff. You don't even have to tell them.
Well, where it really translates in product, lack of problems, which is insane. For as many bottles that we send out about 90 cases a week. We're about to be in over 1,900 clinics. We're all over the place, and the only problems we ever have, which are rare, or with misuse, like using it the wrong way. There's only one way you can use a prawn. It's basically to use it as a compress for way too long. They're covered with plastic as a compress, which I guess some people learn in school. But it's amazing how safe it is for being that strong. And that is 100% quality. That's what that's all about. Because we'll get people that one of the funny stories associated with that is my first warehouse guy. It's his part-time retirement job, but he's been in warehouse work forever. He's been a business owner before. He's a really cool guy. And he came to work with us because he really just liked our product. And he was working somewhere else. And he's like, you guys need somebody a couple days a week? I'm like, that used to be a warehouse manager? Well, sure. So anyway, he's also, his wife just loved this stuff, right? So he's been with us for 4 to 6 weeks or something. And he says, well, first, because it looks really good, Rob, here, he's like, we're not doing anything illegal, are we? Because there's a Breaking Bad vibe when I'm going back and forth to clinic with a big RV, was loaded with alcohol. And so I'm like, no, we're not doing anything illegal. It is kind of odd around here. But then he said, one day he's like, well, wait a second, is there cinnamon in this? And his wife, remember, loves this stuff. She's bought it for friends. She's bought it for family, or whatever. And I'm like, yeah. And I go into from 30-year-old trees and the mountains of Guangdong, this so pure with microscopically tested. And he's like, my wife has anaphylactic reactions to cinnamon. One year she was in the hospital 3 different times with it. And so those are the things that make you think, because at Imperial Grade Herbs, there's no pesticides, there's no chemicals, there's no GMOs. And also, we're not using commercial ethanol. We don't have any additives. We have water, we have drinkable grain alcohol, and we have the cleanest herbs that you can possibly get, which do cost 4 or 5 times the amount that normal herbs do. But who cares? I mean, is it really that much? Herbs. People don't know that in our profession, herbs are cheap. I mean, they really are. When you look at an ingredient list, herbs are cheap, even the expensive ones. So what's causing people's reactions? And I do the same thing. I patch test people in the clinic all the time. Oh, I'm allergic to menthol. Or, oh, I'm allergic to camphor. Patch test them and nothing. Then I'll get somebody that thinks they had a reaction to it, and they'll come back 6 months later. They go, oh, I started using it again because it was something else that I was doing. So where are these reactions that so many people have? And I really firmly believe it's in all the extra pep. It's not in the herbs that you put in that one or that you put in that topical. It's on something that herb was treated with. It's on something that was in that, soil, some pesticide, or it's, a something else the FDA, which is a sore subject for me, wants you to put something in there. With FDA, you know how easy it is to get FDA approval? If you stick a drug in there,
I do not.
It's very, 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 very difficult unless you want to put a drug in there. If you want to put some sort of drug, whether it's aspirin or some sort of chemical additives, then all of a sudden your approval is.
What you're saying, wait a minute. Let me make sure I got that right. If you want to put a drug in, FDA is okay, but if you don't, they're more strict. Did I hear that correctly?
Yep, absolutely. It is a very, very weird system where, we buy this.
So what's going, I mean, what do you have to do in terms of FDA with this?
So as it turns out, we're not going to FDA. We are going to do GMP. Believe it or not, there's GMP in America, which basically gives you the same freedoms that FDA does. FDA allows you to make claims. It's as simple as that. But it's very, very weird. So since I'm also not using synthetic camphor or synthetic, menthol, which is rare. They're expensive, you know what I mean? But since I'm using natural camphor or natural menthol, and there are no chemicals in the product whatsoever, in order to get even base approval from them. So when I say base approval, I would really, really like to not be paying all of the consumption and sin taxes on the alcohol that I buy, because it's over 50% of what I'm buying. And there is a path to that, to the Department of Treasury. There absolutely is. And so basically I've been told several times, well, if you just add these things to it, we'll get you approved right away. So, do I save $70,000 this year, or do I stick to my principles? Well, I stick to my principles. So I am not going to add anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, adding what kinds of things?
So all of a sudden, let's say, for instance, that I added something like salicylic acid. I add some aspirin to it. Let's say that I add to my alcohol. They have a list of things that you can add to what they call denaturate. All right. That they say, oh, these are all benign. You just add those in it, and then we'll just get you approved. And I'm like, I don't want to add those things because, as you know, in Chinese medicine, everything that you add to a formula changes their formula. It's as simple as that. Am I being crazy about it? Probably, but that's, like I said, everybody says I'm crazy along the way. But I know it's going to happen. I just know it's going to take longer and maybe cost a little bit more, like, your home or mine project or whatever. So I thoroughly know that this is going to be a business for a long time, hopefully a legacy business. Most of my family, my kids are working, they're going to work with me. My wife's CFO. And it's going to be around for a long time. It's going to help you for a long time. So getting over this little FDA hump, it's but anyway, I don't know if you knew, GMP, we have GMP in America. Good manufacturing processes, which I thought was an Asian thing from Australia. We have GMP here. And that's what we intend on doing by the end of the year. Hopefully by the end of the year. So
you plan to go the GMP route, not the FDA route?
Yeah, it's basically FDA light. So if you're GMP, it would be not extremely easy, but 90% easier if you ever did want to get FDA approval. And FDA approval is really just to make claims. And it's a messed up system, because even though, say I want to call my active ingredients camphor and menthol, even though they've been proven as active ingredients, probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times, you still have to go through being studies that prove that they are active ingredients in their formula, etc. So I don't know if I'm just bucking it on principle, or bucking it on cost, or bucking it because I'm just not a fan.
Yeah.
But GMP is great, which is even great for us because all Chinese medicine, we know GMP. We're familiar with that. It just means that your place is set up great. You're not doing anything dirty. You've got safety protocols in place. You've got your batches and your lots, all the stuff that you should be doing as a big boy in business.
Mm-hmm. So the main difference being you don't get to make claims.
Yeah, you don't get to make claims. And so a lot of that's wording. So patients have found, people have reported, people can say stuff about your product all day long. Your practitioners that you sell to can say stuff about your products all day long. So I don't know if you know this, but we don't create anything. So when people order as a wholesale account, you can have 24 bottles You can have spray tops or no spray tops. We don't make any handouts. We don't make any flyers. We won't make any cards. We don't make anything. But what's happened is we've told everybody to try to share what they're making, and a lot of people do really share. Like they make like the coolest things. So a lot of times stuff that I post, I'm just reposting something that somebody made that was freaking fantastic. And so I didn't make any claims about that. They said something and I'm like, oh, that's perfectly good. So we keep it really, really simple. I say that we're a chainsaw, not a scalpel, so that we can keep up with growth. And that's all that we've been doing. For these 6 years, we're just keeping up with growth. But then everybody else creates and collaborates. You know what I mean? There's so much meat on the bone in Chinese medicine, especially for a product that pretty much all the patients can use. That the spirit of collaboration that it's made and the spirit of making money together, honestly, that it's created that's another thing that I see. It does my heart well, because I always tell people that, you got to be strong to give strength, and you can treat and whatnot very, very ethically, and at the same time live a really good life and make money. They're not mutually exclusive of one another. And I think in our profession, we have a lot of people in it for compassion. But if you don't make money and you don't do well making money in the profession, you're going to leave it. And then nobody's going to be able to experience the help that you've been given. So, that's one of the things that's important.
You have just put your finger on something near and dear to me, partly because I labored for years under the really faulty idea that making money somehow made me, let's say it, less virtuous. Maybe me making more meant somebody else had less. And that is the faultiest damn thinking that I know of. There's something wonderful. And we know this in nature, right? You look at nature, things that do well because they have the capacity to interact with their environment. And generally speaking, unless they're an invasive species, it's because they're working in consort with the other things in their environment, which is, I think, what we do as practitioners. We're helping to help people. And one of the ways that you're helping is you're actually having a fair amount of money flow into your pocket, because there's always an exchange between systems that are benefiting each other. It's really, really important.
Well, oh, absolutely. And I always tell people, the people that aren't going to show up, they're going to last minute cancel or whatever, are the people that you try to treat for free or give that deep discount to, because sometimes they just don't value it. But a lot of times it's somebody that doesn't feel like there's an exchange going on. That exchange in nature of all sorts is really, really important. And you shouldn't, after you've been in this business for say 3 to 5 years, especially 5 years plus, you really shouldn't be struggling. You should take the way that you look at money and that you look at the income and whatnot and realize, or just imagine what it would be like if all your bills were paid, you had a nice, reliable car, you maybe had a couple little nice things, you didn't have to worry about your bills. Imagine how much more you could give to your patients. There's nothing worse than being super behind on your bills. It's the end of the month, and then going in and knowing that you're not going to make your bills on that last patient. As a matter of fact, the last time I did that, I think I was a massage therapist and a physical therapist. I've been in this profession, so in so many different things. But this was before I was a physical therapist. This was a massage therapist and a physical therapy course. And it was the first couple of years, I saw a ton of patients, like 60 to 120 half-hour sessions. But this is before I had built up to kind of that. And this person came in, very nice, attractive younger woman, that it was cash. She was paying cash, which is rare at that point. And so I took her back. It was the last treatment of the day. And I finished the treatment. And honestly, I can't even tell you what I did. I walked out of that treatment room and I'm like, I don't know where I was. I was thinking about how I wasn't going to make my bills. How I was going to come up like, $300 short for the week or whatever. So she went to check out and I told the front desk person, I'm like, don't charge it. And she said, what? I'm like, I wasn't there. I was not there for the treatment. No, you did great. And it doesn't matter if I did great or not. I wasn't there. So I wanted to teach myself a lesson. And it was a hard lesson because, $60 or whatever it was when you have nothing and you're down is a whole lot more than like $6,000 when you're way up. So think about that when you're when you're trying to get a good relationship with money, whatever business that you're in, especially in the healing arts, if you got to be strong to give strength. So if you're sitting there struggling with things mentally and financially, how can you give all of that to all the patients that come on board?
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Wow, you've got to be strong to give strength. I wish somebody would have said that to me in the first couple of years of my practice. I think at some level I knew that, but it would have been helpful to have heard it from outside.
Well, and there's some cold, hard facts that need to be told to new people as well. And this was actually in the keynote speech for my graduation. Like, the guy gave these facts, and he was a successful practitioner, 15, 20 years or whatnot. And he basically said, look around you, and in 3 years, half of you will be gone. And look around you again. After 5 years, half of those will be gone. Look around you again when you hit to 10 years. Now, these are old stats from 20-some years ago, right? But it still remains the same. And most of it, a fallacy is that we get out of school and we know what we're doing. I mean, at my school, 1,000 hours of herbology for 500 herbs, 500 formulas. I'm like, that's way over a piece of cake. I get out of school, I'm like, I know nothing. And what you find is that it's just called a practice for a reason. That's the time when you start to learn, you start to practice, you start to roll up your sleeves, you start to really put in the work that makes you good. And so there will be struggle, while you're doing that. But don't get over the money struggle part first. People are coming to you for a reason. And you need to be around for that. I mean, I'm no different than anybody else. My heart is much bigger than my head. Like a lot of times I say that I have front desk people because I give everything, which is probably partially true. But I have a much better relationship with money than I did.
We talk a lot about chi cultivation in our work. And if we would take and apply that to our financial livelihood using the same exact language, I think it's easier to have a more friendly relationship with what I'm going to call resources. We call it money, but it's a resource. It's a kind of chi, and it allows us to do things. Look, the more you have, like you were saying, the more you have, and if you have a bit of an excess, now you've got more to give. We all want to be able to give to our patients. You can't give from an empty bucket.
That's exactly right. I've had newer people talk about, well, I want to give back. I want to, have gratitude. Or I want to do this. And I'm thinking to myself, your car is about to break down every month. That is something that's great to do, but why don't we get that car taken care of? So why don't we get your day-to-day taken care of? Why don't we get you in a real smooth groove where you actually can give back without it harming you? I mean, that's all there is to it. So now that's one thing that I tell my kids sometimes too. I'm like, whatever I gave you when you were young and growing up, it was a lot. It might have only been something that was $40. It might have been a couple Matchbox bars at the end of the week when I was going to school and working and remodeling a house and trying to pay for everything. But that was a lot to me. You know what I mean? So what happens if you're fortunate enough and you keep working in the right direction, your a lot becomes different. So now when opportunities come up to give things, we definitely help people by giving things. I think we just sent, what did we send? 50 or 60 bottles to a graduating class that's coming up for their kind of goodie bags. We've sent, cases to Ukraine. We've sent cases to all sorts of other places because we can. We can stick them on a boat. We can get them in the right hands to the right people. For no other reason than just because we can give back. But then the other side of that too is you can't.
That's pretty fun, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. And the other thing is too, that you can sit there and you can be like, well, what if we got just some stupid water system that's going to make the water, so much better. And then all of a sudden we've done that. The results, by the way, way exceeded anything that I thought there would might be.
Okay. So what?
It made the extraction so much more complete. But anyway, we can do stuff like that.
Hang on a second. There's the part of me, that loves to know how things work. Years ago, I lived in Olympia, Washington, where I went to school. And they had a beer called Olympia, of all things. And
didn't they also have Rainier beer?
Oh, damn, Rainier beer was so good.
Wasn't that one? That was a long time.
Oh, and the Rainier commercials were the best. Oh, they were hilarious. But, right there on that Olympia can, it said, it's the water.
Yeah.
And all the great beer companies and a lot of the great whiskey companies, they always talk about their water. So talk to me a little bit about water and extraction.
I tell you, the rabbit holes that we could get into. And what I'm doing when I post things a lot of times about my process, because a lot of people will see that I freely give away so much of the information about the inner workings of scaling up and about making things, etc. I do that because at the lower levels, we are just not privy to this information. This isn't stuff that you can YouTube. This isn't stuff that you can look up like on the Google. That it just doesn't work that way. What happens is, believe it or not, the breweries and distilleries, as they get larger, are actually a real kind of water obsessed. And you would think, wait a second, with a distillery, I'm distilling out anything from the water anyway. Oh, no, it doesn't work that way at all. So the mineral profile that's in is particularly important. How much dissolved particles that are in it. So I'll give you the practice of how this affected me. So over the years, what's happened is when we started, we used to get sediment in the bottom of our tank, right? That I first thought was something that needed to be strained out. Later, I started to come to find out this is medicine that hasn't gotten into solution. So how can we get into solution? So we used to, with maybe, say, for instance, a 10-gallon vat, a 5-gallon vat, we'd get maybe an inch of sediment that we just couldn't get out of there, kind of a gooey, messy, but highly medicinal type thing. To over the years now, before we went up to our big brewing equipment, we were getting about a half a centimeter in a 20-gallon vat, which is really, really darn good. And I was like, I don't know that we'll get much better than that because there's a lot. It's mostly minerals and salts that you can't kind of get. You can only put so much into solution in water and alchemy. And so anyway, we got our fancy water system that it UV sterilizes. Then you go through these big tanks of charcoal and gravel. One takes out all the chemicals. One takes all the particulate. Then it goes through salt, softening, and then it goes through ionization, which I think ionization was really one of the big keys for it. And so we did our first boil, our first decoction with, I guess the water on that was 135 gallons of water. And anyway, I was like, wow, it boiled really, really well. And then there's stages that I watched for all along. I tend to these pots every day. So
wait a minute, hang on a second. Boiled really well. How do you know water's boiling well? I'm being a little geeky here, but like water boiled well?
No. Well, and so I
mean, you sound like someone who's a tea expert. Well, we got the water boiled just so.
And oh my gosh, I've partially ran a tune for a while. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so what happens is it's very important to me, not only how quickly, but how evenly these vats boil. So with this particular one, this was the second time that we were testing our 300-gallon batch model. And so not only did it come up to boil very easily and kind of evenly throughout, but one of the other things that I noticed very notably is you didn't have any what I call sort of pre-steam. Now I know what pre-steam is. Steam that starts coming out at like 160 degrees, 180 degrees, 190 degrees. That's not water vapor. What that is the chemicals and whatnot that are in whatever you're boiling. So that's like where distilling starts to happen. That's the stuff.
Kind of an off-gassing. It's actually stuff off-gassing out of the water.
Yes. What happens is yes. So they boil at a lower temperature. And the first things are the worst things. They're things like acetone, like methanol, like when you actually distill alcohol, you want to remove those from the equation because they're bad for you, right? So that was the first thing I noticed. I was like, we're not really getting much of any of that. But then we started getting a steady stream up around the 170 range or so. And what I know now is, see, we do this weird thing where we soak for 3 days, which is technically a fermentation where we do create some alcohol. It's gotten silly involved. It's weird, but that fermentation part is what softens up the cell walls that allows us to extract even more. So we did see at the point very uniformly when that little bit of alcohol that we created started to off gas, we saw that. But the real thing, the real kicker was this is the first time. So I've got these 4 big vats in front of me and I've got to equally distribute this final product into these 4 vats. This is 10 days later after it already soaked in alcohol and stirred every day. And as I'm putting it into these vats, evenly distributing it, it is hitting all the marks that clarifying does perfectly. Now, when I say clarifying day around here is typically the most nerve-wracking day. Not nerve-wracking because I know it always turns out right, but it's the one that takes the most of me mentally. Because first of all, you start out with what looks like milkshake. Then you start getting these globulous clouds of like amorphous herbs floating kind of around. Then you start to get that dissipate and you get these streaks of bubbles that are rainbow colored. And then you start to get this movement in it that does all of these sorts of different things. But anyway, there's all these stages that I look for, and it determines if I need to stir more or aerate more, et cetera, et cetera. But into the story, it came out perfect, almost exactly to recipe, which normally it's plus or minus maybe 10% of alcohol. And I stirred it up, and it still didn't go cloudy, like it had sediment or something in it. So what ended up happening is when I checked the sediment in the bottom of these vats, there was, so very little. Instead of this bunch of goo, there's like so very little because of the lack of dissolved solids in our original product and the lack of chemicals, the lack of whatever, we are extracting that much more like into solution and it's staying there. It's not like coming out of solution, so you don't have to shake the bottle or anything. So I know it's weird that I'm talking so animated and passionately about water. But that's why we do stuff like this, because now, like I know, and hopefully I'll be able to translate that down to what somebody can do for their clinic or for their home that isn't like super big like mine is, because there are much smaller versions of things like this, but water matters.
So water's interesting stuff. We live on a water planet. We're made of water. Did you ever see that book? I think it came out of Japan, where this guy would take water and like put the word love on it or put the word hate or this or that, then he'd freeze it and then take these thin slices and you'd see, with things that were positive, these like beautiful crystalline forms and for things that were negative, these, nasty looking, they look like cancer cells.
So do you know that he did even more? He put just regular old, he put water in the subway down there, right? And in Tokyo, I believe it was. And he put vats that were spaced like 100 meters apart or something. And he wrote something like that on it, like love on one, like mad on another, like whatever. And the differences were just profound. So we do give all of our vats some love. We play music for them. It might not be your choice in music, but it makes me happy. So, but yeah, it's so weird.
It's like having plants, right? We play music for them.
Well, it is because why do you think they'll be soakers? Why don't I just throw the alcohol in to stabilize it and just batter up? Let's go. I keep it in there soaking because what you're getting constant chemical reactions the whole time that we're soaking. It's changing. It's like a living type thing. It really is. It does the neatest stuff. And so like every day when I stir it, I'll look in and I'll check and I'll see if it's doing what it was supposed to do. I'll see how it's interacting. And it really, this sounds stupid, but it really does almost seem like an as an intelligence to it. It does some very, very interesting and cool things. Like Yeah, it's a whole lot different than a clay pot. Go sticky leaves in the ground for 6 months.
So you are stirring this every day?
Yes, absolutely.
You yourself?
Yeah. I'm the one. I will probably always make it. I told myself that I would only grow as big as I can make it by hand and not have to cut corners. But what's happened during that time, I thought I would have passed that a long time ago. But what's happened is because of innovation and really doing this deep dive studying to brewing and distilling, is I still can make it all by hand. I'm just doing it on a larger scale. And reality, the larger scale is making it a better product. In my case, it's more involved, what I have to do, stirring, aerating, agitating, adding alcohol on stages. That's a big one. We don't just add it all on time. Using 190 alcohol allows us to add the stages. But I will only grow to the point where I can make it with my own two hands. Now, my son works here. I told you, my wife's the CFO. I have people that help out with this and that, but it's so funny because my son helps me a lot, but I think it sounds really easy what I'm doing, but he's just like, I have problems following you sometimes. And I'm like, it's not that bad. But yeah, I think I can probably, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5x and still keep it like this. I say that now, but with innovation.
With innovation, who knows? Here's the other thing. It's a little bit like compounding interest. Back to the idea of money. You build a business, you learn a trade, you learn a process, you create it. In a sense, it creates you as you create it. As you create the thing, it will tell you what it wants if you're paying attention.
Absolutely.
And so you begin to hit these bigger economies of scale, in part because things do scale to some degree. They should. But also there's a kind of know-how in your head, in your hands, in your understanding of how things work. I've had people say things to me like, wow, podcast a week, that takes a lot. It's like, well, yeah, yes and no. I've been doing it for 8 years. I started off doing it. I started off learning. I've been learning all the way through. At this point, 1 a week, sure. But it's because I'm up to speed and I have the experience that built me up to speed. I suspect you've got a very similar thing. You're up at a certain speed, but more importantly, you have the experience of doing what you've done. And so all of that gets like folded back in. And it's like you're your own enzyme in a way.
You're touching on, sure, and you're exactly right with what you do as well. You're touching on a real sore spot for me about society these days. We are exceeding in the fact-rich and context-poor, which leads to the false impression of intelligence or knowledge. You know what I mean? So, and some of my staff's younger. They're extremely smart and intelligent. My son's 25. My front desk office manager is 24. Super, super smart on the ball people. But sometimes I have to tell them what you're saying with what we're doing here is correct, but it's also 100% wrong because your facts are right. But without context, it's really, really hard to see. Sometimes in context, it doesn't matter. I think that's what experience and repetition do. It gives you such context. When something happens around here, I can very, very easily see the solution to it. Or if I sit and think for a minute on the harder ones, I can find a way around whatever. But also probably like you, I'm not thinking, I always tell them, we're not probably solving this problem. We're not taking a minute to solve this problem for today. We're taking a minute because when it happens in the future, we'll know exactly how to handle it all. We've already got it. We've got context for that new thing that pops up or that rare thing that pops up, and would it be nothing? So let's take the time. Let's spend too much time on it. Let's make it perfect this time. But yeah, there's a lot of people running around that think they have this huge knowledge base. Without context, some of these things are just impossible. No overnight success.
Well, here's what I know about overnight success, at least watching people that have had overnight success. It's usually overnight success after years of hard work. All of a sudden, now they're in the limelight, but it's because they've been putting in the time and the effort day after day after day. Folks that have done that can survive that success overnight. People that haven't done that and get overnight success, more often than not, it will destroy them. It won't build them. It will destroy them.
Because, that's something that team a little bit too, that's one of the things that I tell my team. So, my son, I was in the infantry a million years ago and got lucky enough to be old guy for much of that time. And my son was in the Air Force. He got out a couple of years ago and was out for a year before he started working with us. So he was used to working in a government system where there's a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of things that go with that. But I tell my team, look, we don't throw money at problems. You know what I mean? I don't mind spending money, you know what I mean? But we don't throw money at problems. We figure problems out. And if it needs resources, as you mentioned, to go towards it, we don't mind spending resources, but I don't just want to throw money at a problem, because most of the time when somebody does that, you didn't solve a problem, you patched it. Money can patch a heck of a lot of problems, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
Well, or you might have made the problem worse. Look, money is great for solving the problems that money solves, but it's awful at attempting to solve a problem that money doesn't, right? You hand a drug addict on the street $500 to help make their situation better. You're not going to make their situation better. Money doesn't solve that problem.
Very, very true. I'll tell you though, having a budget, like I said, the only reason that we grow now is just to help more people. Well, we've got clinics that have believe on us, which I think is awesome. I mean, we have a couple of sellers that when we set the $40 bottle thing, I was just told that that's what this quality we fetch in China. And I thought it was just this eye in the sky type thing. You know what I mean? We're okay, $40 a bottle. But what the idea is, if people come into the clinic and they get it for anything less than they see as retail, they're going to think that they just got to wait. There's very few products that we can do that with. Very few. So they come to your clinic and it's $25 or $35 or whatever, and they see they can't get it for less than $40 online, and all of a sudden you're a hero. But anyway, I cannot believe it still, but we have a couple people that sell single bottles online to the tune of 3 to 4 cases a month. I mean, they're just killing it. That makes me feel freaking amazing, because I know that I'm helping them get strong. And I also know that they're helping all of those people. It's like they're doing it together. It's like a win-win-win. But the point of what I was saying with that is that when you have a budget and you're thinking your problems out instead of just throwing money at them, that's when the budget becomes really, really impactful. Like whether it's a water system or whether it's the tanks that we're setting up, or whether eventually it's the still that we'll buy. It puts into practice something.
Because you want to make that money, you want that money to do the best possible thing it can. You want to put it, it's like if you're navigating to a place, you need to make sure you're headed in the right direction.
Right.
Now,
yeah, it's fun. Lots of fun.
Well, clearly it's fun. Evil bone water, for God's sake. I mean, how could you not have fun every day when you think about that?
We have a very interesting office around you. It's always a lot of fun.
I'll bet you do. Do you have T-shirts and all that? I mean, you got like swag and things.
So we're just about to do that. We're for the first time finally kind of caught up with production because of the bigger bats, but we keep growing, so I kind of keep chasing it. But yeah, we're about to have some T-shirts and whatnot, and the name's just a bad translation, right? I mean, you heard that story, I'm sure.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of qi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Tell me the story. I mean, I was thinking about it for myself. I mean, Zhonggu Shui, like upright bone water. I'm just like, oh, he's doing evil bone. It's just...
I've told the story. I'll keep the story short, but nobody comes into your clinic and asks for Zhonggu Shui. They know. I've used it for decades. Not a single person ever came in and said, can I have some Zhonggu Shui? They will not broach the Chinese. They just won't. So I would always tell them a story before I prescribe it to them. And a lot of times I don't suggest herbs for people. I do sometimes, but most of the times I prescribe it to them. I'm giving them something that they cannot get anywhere else or wouldn't know that it was in there. So it's almost a disservice if I know of something that's going to help them tremendously and I don't prescribe it to them or don't give them the option. So I tell them a little story, and the little story was simple. When I went to school, I had to decide when I was doing herbs whether I was going to do the common, the Chinese, or the Latin. And I'm like, I don't like the Latin. I do like the common, but I really like the Chinese because they're very descriptive of what the herbs are, what they do. So I started learning medical Chinese. You know, I was like, and it was great because, again, like I look at a formula and it creates a picture for me of what the formula does or what's in it or whatnot.
And it tells you what it is. The formulas tell you what they are. It's simple. Chinese medicine is easier to do if you have some medical Chinese. It actually becomes simpler.
Yeah, it's much, much simpler and start to make those contextual connections. You know what I mean? It's great. So anyway, I'm learning it. And we had, the school I went to had 18 double doctors from China that just tops of their fields, heads of hospitals, written books. I mean, it was just a stellar staff. And anyway, I was in clinic as a first year, and one of the master herbalists was in there. Somebody asked them what Zhonggu Shui meant, because we use it in all rooms, so why not? And he looks at them and he goes, "Oh Lord, evil bone gun." It gives this like weird chuckle, sinister chuckle, and I'm like, that is not what that means. That is not what that means. And I didn't say anything because I'm very respectful. And the way the Chinese teach, there's a bit of respect that goes on there, but they also don't tell first or second years much of anything anyway. They just keep it in the books until you show some prowess or whatnot. So anyway, I just filed it away as just them being angry. But then 3 years later, another intern in internship asked the same question. Another totally different master was, evil bone water. I'm like, what are these guys talking about? I still, to this day, do not know what they're talking about because it's like rectified, correct, vanquish, bone water. And, the characters don't have direct translations sometimes. There's wiggle room in it. So anyway, I would tell the story, though, and people would come in and they would ask for, can I have some, bone water? Can I have some of that stuff? They still won't say that ain't evil bone water. They'll call it like Mercure from or I don't know, all kinds of weird names. Bong water, Mark juice. I've heard so many weird names. But they'll come in and they will ask for it. You know what I mean? They know what it is, even if they feel funny about saying a name. So what was I supposed to do when I had my own brand? I'm like, I got to name it bone water. So we just added Zhe in with so Zhonggu Shui, which is rectified, correct, or vanquish evil, which, Zhe isn't really evil. It's something that needs to be corrected, something that's there that's not supposed to be, something that needs to be normalized. So I was like, why not? And again, this is one of many steps that people told me I was just praising for. Oh, you can't name it that. I'm like, but nobody's going to forget it. All right.
No one is ever going to forget it. Well, of course you could name it. I mean, why not name it that?
Yeah. I mean, it's the story that, it's the story. I'd say that we do a lot of things with feng shui. And so the feng shui is not like put a frog with some coins in your bathroom under the toilet so your stuff doesn't escape. I'm not that into feng shui, but at the same time, it's just wind and water, how things flow. So, when people come into the clinic and I tell them the story, I'm giving them a little pad and they go with it. They follow the flow of that. They come back in with it. They talk to us about it. As a matter of fact, when we did our labels, I've got like my wall of labels that's up there of all the different bottles and labels that we went through iterations. And what we would do is we would take the bottles and we would put them at the front desk. And if nobody commented on it, within about 2 weeks, we changed the label. And if nobody commented, within about 2 weeks, we changed the label. And we would just wait until people finally were picking it up and going, oh, what's this? So as soon as they were picking it up and going, oh, what's this? We knew we were really close. But it's the same thing. We were we were putting a rock.
Dude, that is just old school A/B testing right there.
Yeah, I told you I got some old school like business trade, which does help, but I didn't train for manufacturing, so I'm at a weird level now. But yeah, I mean that's as simple as that, and that's what I tell people when they grow. You don't have to be perfect when you're making something for the first time. What if you make this first formula and you sink all this money into it, and you get a trademark and you get a blah, blah, and it sucks, or nobody likes it, or nobody picks that bottle up at the counter? You can go through so many things before you get everything perfect. I mean, we didn't trademark for 4 years. Like we didn't even really have product liability for several years too. I mean, you layer it on as you get your proof of concept. And, if you want several products, find your winners first. Get your pony, get the one that's going to really drive the rest of the things, and look at the other things as your fun projects, and maybe another one will hit. But gosh, if you have a clinic, the market research that you can do, because it's your market, it's 30 to 100 people coming in your door every day that are in your target market. So they are, man.
They are your market. Yes, exactly. And, I think it helps to have an inquiring mind. It helps to be able to laugh at your own mistakes. It helps to be inquisitive. There's a saying about never wear a hat that's more interesting than you. And so, like, how can you get away with a name like Evil Bone Water? Because you're the kind of guy that is fine with your stuff being called Evil Bone Water. Not everybody could pull that product off. But, when you're sitting there with a big paddle, yeah, right. Now, what's the story behind that? Yeah, what's the story behind Saint Apothecary?
Well, and also calling it Saint Apothecary, so it's very confusing. That's just, I feel like my whole life I've been led in a direction. And if I don't feel like I'm being led in a direction, I need to get more sleep, more rest, more food, more study or something, so I can get back on the path, get back into the flow, is what I would say. So I had been through about a decade where I was mostly just teaching. I was out on the road somewhere teaching osteopathic type, neuromuscular, et cetera, all over the world. And anyway, that company, I was working for myself, but mostly for this other company that sort of folded quick. As in, I show up and they owe me a lot of money, and all of their stuff's in a dumpster, like all their medical models, all of their stuff. And I'm like, file cabinets with files. I'm like, this ain't good. This probably ain't good. So I'm like, I'm going to need to have a clinic again, because I'm not going to be working in their clinic, every once in a while. So I'm like, what would I like as a name? I don't know. How about Saint Acupuncture and Wellness? It sounds like a pretty cool name. I like it. So, but what was so funny is very shortly after that, I was living in St. Petersburg, but I was contacted by somebody on St. Simon's Island, Georgia, that knew of my reputation through seminars, that said, we'd love you to come here. I thought that it was just this stinky little place up the coast of Georgia. I didn't know it was like a paradise. So anyway, 90 days later, I had a new house, a new clinic, opening up Saint Acupuncture and Wellness on St. Simon's Island, Georgia. And it just sort of flowed right in. Oh, and get this. I rented out it was like kind of like a little starter house type thing. I rented out my house really quick, 6 months in advance, to a company like that just came up at the very, very last minute when I was getting ready to move up there. And the guy looked at it, he's like, where did you want me to send the check? And I said, St. Simon's Island, Georgia. It's just a little barrier island, 5 miles off the coast of Georgia. He's like, I live in St. Simon's Island. I'll drop it by your front desk tomorrow. And I went, what? So I was thoroughly in the flow at the time. But anyway, so it just sounded natural, because if you have Saint Apothecary making Evil Bone Water, it can't be all that bad, right? And I think it's enough to, it's not like Devil Dog Apothecary making Evil Bone Water. It buffers it a little bit. It's what they call when you dress like the high-low, where you wear some ratty stuff, but then you have a nice watch on or something.
Yeah, kind of a funky T-shirt, but really nice shoes.
See all these old business things that you forgot about? Right. You see all these business things that you forgot about from like the 90s that I'm cropping back up in here. Oh, I do want to say one thing to people that are potentially making or business people, etc. Please, if you can resurrect something from the 90s that so few people know right now, this is like a soapbox of mine. It is so easy to start a business these days. It is so easy to get a side hustle going and actually make a little bit of money, pay a bill or two with it. It's so easy. You don't have to run all over the place to a printer or find equipment or search through warehouses of weird, obscure, used stuff to start something. It is so easy. But the most important thing that you will ever do is clearly define your target market. This annoys me so much because I'll get people going, well, I want to pay all this money to do this and this and this. And we've never advertised. We've never spent $1 of our money. We have just had it. We built it. You guys have built it for us. But if you know your target market, what they eat, where they go, how they live, their education level, the whole thing. And I get all these people that have had this beginnings of success go, well, what's target market? And then when I tell them, they're like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I'm like,
well, it is 101.
Because if you're doing something and you're not, it is. And if you're not reaching or touching, I want to go do this on-site thing and there's going to be a lot of people there and whatever. I'm like, well, what is it? It's a dentistry convention. I'm like, if it's a yoga type thing that's local to your community. So, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. But my soapbox is if you want to do a business and everything, your label, the smell, the look, everything that you do, anything that you pay for advertising, target market is so incredibly important.
Yes. Now, you're probably familiar with Seth Godin.
Yes.
So Uncle Seth, as I like to think of him, he's like the smart uncle that, he's my adopted uncle. I adopted him. He talks about this, but he talks about it from the point of view of empathy. He doesn't really say target market. He says, who is it that you want to serve? Who do you want to help? He uses that language.
Well, the common thing is they say everybody. Who's your product for? Everybody. Who's your service for? Everybody.
Yeah, well, everybody is nobody. That's right. That's nobody. It's nobody. But if you know who you want to serve and you know what it is that they want that maybe you don't want, or what they're afraid of that you're not afraid of, right? Or what they believe that maybe you don't believe. If you can have that kind of empathy and understanding, and maybe you know something about the rest of their demographics and what that means, but if you've got that kind of heart sense of who are these people and what's important to them, and you have a way to speak to that, man, they're going to be so glad that you came along. It's like the Pied Piper. And it's wonderful because you can be helpful to people.
So I'll give you a business secret. I guess I'm established enough that I can go ahead and get into this. My next year is going to be all about branding and talking to the public about the product. Not for me. It's not going to make me money directly, but it's going to make everybody else that sells it money. Start to get brand recognition, all of that. So it is going to change target market just for that. It's going to be the only advertising money that I've ever spent, but it's full. But here's the secret about what you're talking about with that empathy, about understanding and the fears. So as a wholesaler, my target market is the acupuncture physician that has a client. That's pretty much who it is. Their market is the patient. So when you've got something that's perfect for the patient, that's great, but I've got to think about them. So one of the hardest things that I did, it happened flippantly at first, but I've never sold anything except cases from Luke 1, a case of 24. That is your only potential to purchase. Now, again, keeping the...
So you're like Henry Ford. You can have a Model T any color you want as long as it's black.
As long as it's black. That's exactly it. But there was a reason for that too, because there's this whole problem, like we said, with making money in our profession and the selling and the things like that. And having been in those shoes before, I was 100% about it from the beginning. That's why we went to the Imperial Herbs after a month. For me, they're like, well, it's going to be $800 for the herb order. You're like, what? So, and now our herb orders are like $15,000. It's crazy if you ever told me that. But anyway, as an herbalist, you're like, it's going to be how much? $800, $900. And I'm just like, roll the dice. I've got people's, money on the table. But I made it a case, and I made it a case at a really, really good deal per unit, because I wanted that person sitting in there with their clinic that's a little bit shy about selling to be like, well, crap, now I got these 24 bottles. So what am I going to do with them? You know what I mean?
Yep. Are you in or are you not?
Are you in or are you not? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start using it. And as you're using it on patients, you're going to be like, wait a second. And then the patients are going to be like, wait a second. And then a patient's going to force you to sell them a bottle because you're scared to sell them a bottle. Can I get some of that? Can I ask for some of that? So we tried to make it very impactful, as strong as we can make it and keep it safe. And so that was exactly that empathy that you're talking about. I've been there. So if I spent $300 on a case of something and I got it in and I'm not used to spending that kind of thing, I'll be like, well, now what do I do with it? Well, I stick it in my treatment rooms. I use it. I maybe try it myself. I give it to a family. So it's like that kind of buy-in thing that's really, really worked out well. And how it's worked out is pretty much everybody that's ever bought, not only do they buy again, but they buy progressively more and more each time. So we routinely get in orders for 2 or 3 cases at a time for people that are just trying to kind of keep up, because it kind of takes on a life of its own. That's the kind of stuff that makes me happy, because I know not only did I reach my target market and help them help people, but they're making money. When I see that case go out and know that they're making 10 times what I made on it, I'm like, that's freaking awesome. That rocks.
It's awesome. And
so we won't ever dip our toes into like retail or anything like that, because also you guys handle all the problems too.
Exactly. So speaking of problems, I remember, oh man, this is so long ago. It's a little embarrassing to admit, but I'll admit it anyway. I remember being in acupuncture school and they taught us gua sha. And I thought, I don't need to pay attention to this. I'm here to learn acupuncture. It's like folk medicine. Yeah, whatever, And, I did it in school, but I never really paid attention, never really thought much of it, never really used it until years later when I had someone on the podcast who was really going on and on about it. And I've been a fan of gua sha ever since, right? There's a lot of things that I've overlooked or never learned how to use or was just lazy. I hate to say it. Truth is, I remember zhenggu shui when I was in school. And I got to tell you, man, I was not that impressed. And it was smelly and it was kind of messy. And some patients liked it, but others are like, oh, I walk out of here, with this weird stuff. But mostly I remember it being messy. And I never, and this is on me, it's not on the zhenggu shui, and it's probably not on my teachers either. It's on me. I never really saw that great of effects for it other than, oh, I'm slapping, a little aftershave on you, hoping you're going to feel better.
Right.
So as someone who has not really used the evil bone water or the upright bone water, again, my own deficiencies, how can I go about reinvestigating this in my practice? Because now you've really got me interested in wanting to play with it, because I like helping people and I realize that I do not know how to help them with this. How can I get started?
So first of all, I can't believe that we didn't have Emma send you some already, but just so you could try it out. But so with this, it is extremely potent and powerful. It smells a lot more like pancakes than it does anything else.
Pancakes?
Natural pancakes. Yeah. Natural camphor and natural menthol. Well, natural camphor and natural menthol, most people haven't really smelled them in a commercial formula because they're not used. The synthetic are used. And there's a distinct difference. It's not knocking things that are made with essential oils, but when something's made with a lesser alcohol or essential oil type alcohol, you'll get a bite to it, like a medically, chemically bite type thing to it. But this topical anesthetic for about 45 minutes. So the first place that I would use it in clinic, I swab all the points with it. Because what I'll do is I don't have any apprehension about...
You swab the points with it?
Absolutely, all the points with it. I have no apprehension about 4 gates. I have no apprehension about the fung points or any of the sensitive ones, because they're not going to be sensitive. They're just, we don't get any ouches in the clinic. Never hand I do a Japanese side, but we don't get any ouches in the clinic. So I'll swab the points with them. Let's say, for instance, I really like to do GB31 with Anmian. So when you thread between the two of them from front to back, you can hit them both.
Oh, wait, GB20. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, GB20 and Anmian. So I do that on a ton of patients. Now, the only problem is it can have a tendency to cause a little bit of needle hematoma on occasionally, like if you're doing it from the back sometimes. If you hold evil bone water on that for about a minute, it will completely take the needle hematoma away. It's just like that, gone.
Oh my goodness. Every now and then I'll take a needle out. It bleeds a little bit. You get a little hematoma under the skin and it's going to bruise.
Disappear.
So just put a little evil bone water, hold it.
Disappear. Heal almost instantly, gone. Watch it disappear.
Can't wait. That's cool.
So the things that we've seen for infection are insane. Like I said, we can't make claims, but everything from a bad tooth to hemorrhoids to the reduction of tumors on dogs' gums spritz for bugs. Bugs detest it, especially ticks won't get in your knee. Now you're like, wait a second, topical anesthetic and kind of tingly. If you spritz, that only lasts for about 5 or 10 minutes. But like ours, as opposed to, if you do commercial shungu shui on a point, you'll get a little bit of topical anesthetic effect mildly for about 20, 25 minutes. Ours is about 40, 45 minutes. But gosh, I've seen it just save so many dogs and cats' lives from our infection, sunburn, burns. I'm like, wait a second. Somebody called me. Oh, that stuff that you gave me, hairdresser. I used it on a curling iron burn. That stuff's just the burn cream I gave you. No, evil bone water. The burn cream I gave you? No, I used evil bone water on the burns. The burn cream I gave you. No, I use it on all the burns that we get around here. I'm like, huh? So every single week, somebody calls me up with the versatility of this. They're using it for just freaking everything. And I always check to make sure it's not a one-off before I like tell anybody about it. But one of the weirder ones, oh yeah, if I forget my deodorant, I use it as a deodorant. I'm like, huh? And then 5 people chime in, oh yeah, it makes a great deodorant, antibacterial, whatever. But again, it's the safety and the quality is what it is. So we'll get some out to you. But what I normally recommend that people do is, like, say it's students. A lot of times I'll recommend, because we do sell to students, it's only wholesales to acupuncturist. That's it. You guys are the only guys that can get it wholesale on this. A lot of times students will go in.
Target market.
What's that? It's the target market special. Because I want you guys to reap the benefits from it all the way around. And so, like students, a lot of times they'll go in on a case together, and a lot of times it picks up its own little life, and they start to, they'll split a case. If you go to the where to buy map, this was one of my dreams from the very beginning. We spent a lot of extra money to have this where to buy map that's on our front page, and you can put in your city or your zip code, and it will give you all the clinics in your area that carry it. So a lot of times you can just go and pick some up at a discount from practitioners that are local to you. We're in, I don't know if we hit it yet, but I'm excited. We're in 1,900 clinics now, which is just, to me, and we get people calling and saying, yeah, somebody came into my clinic looking for evil bone water. The best one was somebody came into my clinic and asked if we carried evil bone water. And I look at Christy, and Christy looks at me. And I look at Christy, and we're like just really confused. And we're like, oh, they don't know that this is where they make it. We're just on the where to buy map.
That's hilarious. That's really funny.
But yeah, and I guess the other side effect of having people create everything for us is we have never done any SEO on the internet with it. But if you Google the 20 pages of Google hits, it's all our product. It's all us, but it's not me. So it's all people that are using it. It's, and it's even funny. It's gotten so in depth that I'll go looking for some information on, say, what are the ingredients that's in evil bone water? And it'll come up with a page of hits, and I have to sort through them because they're all references to our stuff instead of some other site that I traditionally use to get information from, which I feel it's really odd. But anyway, so pick it up from a practitioner. We'll send you a little bit, definitely. So we'll send you a little fun pack. We always take fun stuff in our cases too. I'll send you some of the fun stuff we send.
I'm not sure if you've hit upon something really brilliant or if you're just running a cult.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Why not?
What's a cult? What sounds like a cult that isn't a cult?
No, it's really fun talking with you about this. And I love your perspective on business. I love your perspective on putting the work in, building knowledge of what you're doing is so important. Building the context, so important. And, the other piece, and I see this on your Facebook, when I need a laugh, I go look at evil bone water. I do, because it's funny and it's quirky and it's you. It's just like you and the thing that you do. I think we forget this in our business. I know that for a long time, I thought, I'm in the medicine business. This is serious. And that wasn't nearly as fun. As it became more fun, I became less serious, more successful too, by the way, and it's a blast. I mean, I love practicing Chinese medicine because it's fun. It really is. And I can just be who I am. If people want to see somebody in a white coat, they're going to have to see someone besides me. And there's so much room in this world, not just in medicine, but I think anywhere, for us to be just who we are and do what we want to do. Like you said, There has never been a better time to do any kind of a business than we have right now. The interconnective tools that we have, the very low cost of entry. There's just never been a better time to connect with people and take an idea and try it out. It really is a Renaissance type moment that I think we're living in.
Oh, I mean, completely. People don't understand that 20 or 30 years ago, everybody had to be convinced to walk through your door. Now people are pretty much wanting to sign up for a lot more treatments than they're going to need or I want to give them. I mean, it's crazy. But also, what I try to do is I try to provide value on any of my internet, what my daughter calls my internet, my digital footprint. So what I used to do when I could time the algorithm right is I'd post something absolutely ridiculous on my personal page, and then I'd post something really high level on one of the private groups, so that where people bounce back to it, they're like, is he like an idiot savant or something like that? Which it's great to be able to just have the business model of providing value. That's what I do. I figure the more value that I provide, I don't really have to advertise. And it's just fun. It's a very fun business model. I find that the more fun that I'm having with it, and the more that I'm able to share this information that I used to either teach about or 30 years of clinical experience or things like that, the encouragement that you give people really need that. I think if we more freely thought about sharing our ideas and our information and didn't hold on to them, nobody's going to steal your stock. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to steal you. You're you're doing your thing. I believe in just putting all the best out there into the world.
That sounds like great advice. Well, Mark, thank you for your time today. This has been a lot of fun, and I am looking forward to exploring some evil bone water in my clinic. I'll take that step. Maybe I'll become a member of the cult.
We're always looking for new members.
So often in our profession, people complain about the burden of having to run a business. But here's the thing. It's not that you have to run a business. It's that you have the opportunity and privilege that you can run a business. Good luck with doing that in planned economies where you don't get a choice in the work that you do or how you get to do it. Want to open up a low-cost clinic serving queers and trans youth? No one's stopping you. Want to create a medi-spa for the glamour crowd? Have at it. The wonderful thing about running a business is that you get to take your vision of what you want to see in the world and make it so. One of the things that I appreciate about Master Alchemist Brinson is how he glues together his obsession with quality with his sense of humor and then shares all of that with our community of practitioners. So we have the opportunity to both help our patients and make a reasonable return for our efforts so that tomorrow we can get up and do the work that we love to do. Running a business is an opportunity to see what you're made of and what you're capable of making. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.